Dear friends at Nordic Forum, well, I think she said I'm a Danish living in Stockholm, but that's true, right? So I have Denmark and Sweden on my badge. Let me start again with this quotation, which is really the one I love. The feminist movement is like the sea. It comes in waves, but it cannot be stopped. It has, in fact, both an optimistic and a pessimistic element in it. The optimistic is that it cannot be stopped. There's always a feminist movement. I travel as a researcher, as a consultant around the world in order to help empowering women in politics. And there are feminists everywhere in the world. And there has, in fact, been feminists for the last 150 years, and maybe we can say there have always been feminist women who are revolting against patriarchy. But also, it comes in waves. That is the complex thing of it. That means that feminist movement has its peaks, its highs, and the low points also. And we have to understand that all social movements, and especially the feminist movement, goes up and down, but cannot be stopped. So going up and down means also that there are periods with more dogged and more dull organizational work. In the Nordic countries, as you know, probably know, we have some of the old women's organizations who have been there since the end of the 19th century. Dansk Kvindesamfund, Norsk Kvindesagsforening, Frederik Bremer-forbundet, den islandske kvinderetsinderfelag. Some of them are not working very good, and some of them are very active, but still keep on. Denmark has the oldest feminist magazine in the world, Kvinden og Samfundet, Women and Society, which is started in the 1980s. It's almost being closed down every year, but continue. But the wave metaphor also means that when you have a peak, there are lots of new organizations coming up. There are lots of new activities, lots of new groups, lots of dispute, even lots of conflicts. But that's life. That's nice. And we have to understand that every time you have had one of the peaks, there are criticism coming up in the media. There are myths being created that feminists are, what are they? After the suffrage campaign, it was, they're all spinsters. They're not married, they can't get a man. After the second wave, in the 1970s and 80s, it was, oh, they're all lesbians. Or they're all man-hating. Or they want to be like men. I don't know if you can be both at the same time. So, and it's very important, and it's very ugly, because that is telling the young girls that it's not smart to be a feminist. I'm very happy right now. Maybe that's I get lots of phone calls from young school girls who are writing their first essay about the Red Stocking movement, which is the women's movement like Group 8 in Sweden. That was in Denmark. And maybe that's because it's the grandmother, those from the 1970s, us, right? So I get those phone calls, and they say, I'm writing an essay about the Red Stocking movement. Can you tell me, how was it to be a Red Stocking? And now I get in Danish, you say, Hallo, jeg hedder Annette. Hvordan var det at være rødstrømpe? And always those young girls, and I take a lot of energy to talk to them, right? Because they're new feminists. They end up with this question. Did you achieve everything you wanted? And I get so amazed for this question. And I start telling them about all the old questions still there. I mean, unequal pay, rape, women can't go in the dark places or the dark alleys. Politics is still male-dominated, economy is male-dominated. Oh yes, they say, okay. Those are the new feminists. And it's very important. You know, in the first Feminist Forum, no, Nordic Forum, in 1988 in Oslo. The second one was 1994 in Åbo in Finland. But the first one in 1988, there was a question, a Q&A answer, a question and answer session with the gender equality ministers, as there are tomorrow, where I have the honor of asking all the gender equality ministers some questions. But in 1988, the Danish conservative male gender equality minister, who didn't really like gender equality, he said something which made all the audience saying, boo. And what did he say? Well, he said, I think, honestly, that when we have solved some of the questions of gender inequality, there will be some new. Boo, said the whole audience. Why did they say that? Because he was kind of attacking the Nordic thinking about that we are on our way to more and more gender equality. Even if we, as feminists, criticize everything, we had this idea that everything is going forward. Today, I have to admit, he was right. We have the old questions, which I tell the schoolgirls, but we have some new questions coming up. The economic crisis, the austerity programs, where are women in the decision-making on the economic summits? The sexualization of the public space, the sexualization even of young girls. And let me tell you another one. I'm a professor at Stockholm University, and we have the most beautiful gender equality plans and programs. And we have the most beautiful diversity programs and plans for 1 year, for 3 years, right? But those group at the university who need it the most, those who are cleaning, who are almost all of them women with an immigrant background, it's not for them. It's nothing to do with them, all our beautiful plans. Why not? Because their work is outsourced, right? It's a private firm who comes in every 3 years and win the competition to have the cleaning. And of course, they win it because they lower the salaries or ask them to work harder, more square meters in the same hours. So all our beautiful gender equality plans, and I used to say that Sweden is the world champion in planning, right? In writing plans. But those plans are not for the cleaning women, and that's embarrassing. I must say I like the slogan. This was a feminist initiative slogan, and I think we could make it the slogan of all of us. Ut med rasisterne, in med feministerne. And in Danish, ud med rasisterne, in med feministerne. Out racist, out feminist in. And why is this so true? I think it's because that a discourse which is based on dividing people between them, or rather between us and them, that discourse cannot go together with a feminist discourse, the basis of which is the equal value of all human beings. As I said, I work all over the world on empowering women in politics. Men still have 78% of all seats in all parliaments in the world, and women 22%. I'm very happy that the UN Women, and I work also for the UN, has got a new executive director, Mrs. Pomzile, who's come from South Africa, and can still use words like comrades, sisterhood, sisters. We have to change patriarchy, she would say without blushing, right? I don't know if any of our politicians in the Nordic countries can say things like that. Very few at any rate. But there are out there in the world right now fast-track politics going on, which make me conclude that the Nordic model, which has been successful, but I think we are sleeping a little bit. We are a little bit the sleeping beauty on what we have done. Because countries are now making fast-track changes, which we have never tried. Take Senegal, they go from 22% women in politics to 43 in one election. We have never tried that, right? Or even Algeria, which is not a democratic society, goes from 8% to 32% overnight. I call that a gender shock. A gender shock. And I'm very happy to be part of this international women's movement, where we sometimes squeeze the male politicians. Like we did once when I was in Istanbul, and here we were several international people, and they had put all the male leaders of the political parties in the first row, and behind them there were about 200-300 women. And I really felt that we were squeezing them and telling them, to be a modern nation, you have to be including women and you have to include minorities. So when we talk about the waves, when is the feminist movement strong and when is it weak? Well, that is the $10,000 question. I think that we can learn from history that cross-party alliances on certain issues are very important. And all over the world we can see women from different parts, not the xenophobians, but the rest of them, on violence against women, fighting that. Girls' education is also very important, having more women in political decision-making. I also think that to have a very strong women's movement, we need both the more radical activists and the more moderates who go in and negotiate with the politicians about Article 1 and Article 2 and Article 3. And sometimes those two groups hate each other, right? But they need each other. Just like the suffragists, you know, the suffragists in UK, we just had the pictures. I loved them when I read them when I was a teenager. That was fantastic. I mean, they were doing really things that nice girls were not supposed to do. But in the Nordic countries, we used them, I wasn't born then, but the women's movement used them to say, we are not as bad as they. We are not as radical as those are in Britain. So give us the right to vote, because we are moderate, we are nice women, and we want womanhood, childhood, womanhood to influence politics. So let me end again with my favorite quote. That is that the women's movement is like the sea. It comes in waves, but it cannot be stopped. So let us promise each other to make the waves higher and higher, and the speed faster and faster. Thank you.